Friends, Degens, Cartelians, welcome to MCON 3, Detroit. We are gathered here today to build, to renew connections, to learn, to grow. But first, we have important business of a different kind to attend to. We must acknowledge that we have lost an influential member of our community. A beloved and departed member has passed on. Surprise, you're at a funeral, because the MetaCartel Grants DAO is dead. Look upon him, see his sacrifice. The MetaCartel Grants DAO. We might want to turn away. We might want to avert our thoughts and our eyes from this figure of our past. It is sometimes not pleasant to think through the things that we have lost, things that are no longer with us. But don't fall into that trap, friends. No, we must remember the work, the successes, and the sacrifices of the Chili Man. We are here today to celebrate its legacy and to understand what we may take forward in this, one of the great legacies of the MetaCartel Grants DAO at MCON. We are here to build new forms of community organization. So let me tell you the tale of the MetaCartel Grants DAO so that we must all know it as part of our internal culture. The conception. The MetaCartel Grants DAO can trace its roots back to a single tweet from Peter Pan, September 2018, seeking whoever might want to work on the problem of meta transactions. If people recall, the meta transaction problem was one that was an app layer focused thing, a user focused thing, where there would be apps that didn't know how to onboard members because members couldn't go through the onboarding process of acquiring ETH, understanding how gas worked. And so there was a need for dApps to be able to essentially front the cost of the gas transactions for members. This was a huge need, and Peter Pan's summoning of this working group brought people together simply because they saw a need and realized it needed to be filled. There was no company formed, there was no funding, there was no bosses or roles that people could tell other members what to do, no KPIs were set, no permanent commitments were required, and there was no gatekeeping. Anybody could participate. And this, my friends, is the seed for what would become one of the most important organizations in our space, the MetaCartel Grants DAO, the creator of the community-first DAO that we all know and love. The MetaCartel Grants DAO was formed in June 2019 from a number of members that were part of that working group. They enjoyed working together so much they wanted to continue it in the same spirit. And that spirit animated everything that they did. The way that it worked is that members would pledge ETH to join. They would need to find a sponsor among the existing membership to vote them in, and then the members that were currently in would vote members to join, and then the DAO members would agree to fund projects that would focus on the app layer and the end user layer of Ethereum. The contract itself was a fork of the Moloch DAO contract. Moloch DAO, an important DAO in its own right, was focused on the idea that there needed to be a bias for action. Instead of DAOs being bogged down in quorum requirements, instead of DAOs essentially being subject to all of the sort of governance failures that we're familiar with, they would have a bias toward passage, and it would allow members of a community to focus around a particular topic and get it done. In that case, it was infrastructure. It was deep down the stack. MetaCartel Grants DAO saw a different need. The app layer, if you recall, in 2019 was not what it is today. There was a great deal of need for work to be done to bring people on that weren't deeply technical. And so what MetaCartel Grants DAO did was they went to hackathons, they talked to each other, and they found projects that needed support. Oftentimes, these weren't projects that were set up with business plans and pitch decks or anything like that. They simply had a great idea that solved a small problem related to the app layer or the user layer. And MetaCartel Grants DAO was often the first check-in and just simply said, keep going with this. This is worthwhile. And that was the only criteria. And the way they coordinated was online through forums, synchronous weekly calls, getting together IRL, and a dope UI from our good friends at DAO House. What they did and how they functioned is a good story, but it's not the real sauce of what MetaCartel Grants DAO was, what made it so important. The real sauce is that they discovered the formula for a community-first organization on-chain. This was something that the world had not seen before, executed on this scale. And it's the reason that we're all in this room today, is that that problem was solved and that solution was discovered.
Woo! Woo!
So, what does that mean? Community first. Community first means building in the open. It means listening to each other. MetaCartel Grants DAO fostered a culture of cooperative learning, where each member took turns proposing things, teaching others, listening, and working on solutions. There was a culture of leaders emerging that were not given titles. They had no compulsive power over any other member, but their leadership was simply a function of the fact that they were long-term people playing long-term games. And that was a recipe for something that is much stronger than an organization itself, with a hierarchy of roles and people filling various responsibilities, and that could be swapped out and fired as the case may be. This is a very different model, and it has a very different legacy than those other institutions. And the goal here was to basically build as quickly as possible, solve these problems that people saw, and work together on iterating a new type of organization. It was fun. It was full of dank memes, like the Chili Man himself. And the name itself comes from the original working group. The working group for the Meta Transactions project is where MetaCartel comes from. The translation of that is, it's the cartel that is meta. Now, the working group is something that's set in line the culture that would come out of MetaCartel Grants DAO. It would be the working group that launched 1,000 or would launch 1,000 community-first DAOs. But first, there had to be the one. And the one that was MetaCartel Grants DAO left an incredible legacy. What we have with this legacy is something that shaped so many different organizations. There is this one narrow thing that is called the MetaCartel Grants DAO, and it had narrow numbers of members, it had a specific treasury, it funded certain projects, and there were certain forum posts that were there. But it was something much greater than that, because each member of MetaCartel Grants DAO was there as part of one piece of all of their efforts in the space that involved sharing ideas, sharing values, sharing culture, and that transmitted algorithmically throughout many other projects, DAOs, and companies in the space. And so the MetaCartel Grants DAO vibe became something that was easily replicable and solved a lot of problems that a lot of other institutions and crypto projects were running into. They often found themselves, how do we financialize this? Maybe just don't. Maybe just start with building together. Maybe just start with what needs to be done and figuring out how to do that and giving people really good reasons why things needed to be funded, and you'd find ways to convince people to fund them. So this model is really a new form when you layer it on top of the tech stack that existed. It's important too that MetaCartel Grants DAO showed that the tech alone isn't going to do it. There's lots of examples of great code that's out there that wasn't able to accomplish the kind of viability, the kind of cultural permeation that MetaCartel Grants DAO was able to, because they didn't have the community. They didn't have the culture. They didn't align the values of their members. And it wasn't a strict dogma. This isn't a matter of any one person or a DAO vote that says, here are our principles, and they are narrowly defined, and it must fit within this. It was always a permeable thing that accepted contributions from where they would come from and from where they could go. And so this is really a special format that can lead to all kinds of different substrates into crypto projects going forward. Now, it has a legacy. There are many progeny of the MetaCartel Grants DAO, many of which are represented in this room right now. All of these members that went on to other organizations were able to permeate those organizations with the culture here. And that was one of the things that didn't exist before. If you hadn't been in a MetaCartel-like organization, you never knew how well this could work. A culture of radical trust, a culture of accountability, a culture of self-starters, a bias toward action, and a willingness to sacrifice ego for the needs of the community. I want to name check some of these progeny right now, and if you feel like applauding, go ahead. So, some of the progeny of the MetaCartel Grants DAO that were supported by, inspired, or sired by the MetaCartel Grants DAO. Meta Factory, Sablier, DAO House, Zapper, Metagame, Gelato, Raid Guild, Snapshot, MetaCartel Ventures DAO, Fire Eyes, Public Nouns, Raid Brood, Collabland, MetaCamp, Hydra Ventures DAO, Hats Protocol, and this very organization, MCON. And then, as it must for all DAOs, death came from MetaCartel Grants DAO. It died not from some of the chronic problems that we see plague other DAOs in the space. It died not from acrimony among its members that caused a toxic split and an inability to move forward. It died not from a lack of funding that prevented it from achieving its mission. No, it died in the equivalent way to dying peacefully in its sleep at the ripe old age of 4.5. Or in human years, that's 98 years old. It died because it had largely succeeded. It succeeded in achieving its mission. It succeeded in seeing an app and user layer that, because of a lot of the efforts of the progeny that I just identified, was in so much better shape as of last year than any of the founders of MetaCartel Grants DAO, any of the early members could have imagined. This was a problem that essentially had been addressed by the community, partly through signaling, partly through people shipping, and partly through the dissemination of the MetaCartel meme throughout the world. And so, in the end, MetaCartel could have gone on. It could have continued to exist and trying to find a new vision, but there was not an obvious pivot. There wasn't something that had universal consensus among its members about what to do now. What would be the focus of MetaCartel Grants DAO if it wasn't the app layer? And instead of just persisting because it could, MetaCartel Grants DAO took a lesson from nature. Nature tells us that there is a cycle to things. There's growth, maturity, death, decay, and rebirth. Human organizations typically try to avoid the second half of that cycle. There is an argument to be made that institutional permanence is actually a bug, not a feature. You see from the traditional institutional world, you see stagnation, you see ossification, you see capture by people trying to hold on to something that was a legacy built at an earlier time in a different context. Sometimes things should perish and new things should be built that fit the times and the community and the values of that culture. MetaCartel Grants DAO elected that option. It made its final distribution of its treasury assets to two things. One was the support of the Tornado Cash devs and their legal defense fund, because privacy is not a crime. Second, it used its remaining funds to fund this conference right here, MCON, seeing a worthy successor to the values of the community first ethos and the community first values that MetaCartel Grants DAO was founded by. So, we have the end of the road for the chili man here. He was gutted so you all could live. But the seeds from that gutted chili are not its treasury assets. They are not its on-chain proposals. They are not its deployed code. The seeds, sorry, I just want a couple, are here, but they're also here. These are actual seeds that we will be handing out to each and every one of you. You are to take these seeds and plant them where you come from, in the ground, but also you are to plant these seeds in your heart and your head. I want you to take the story and the legacy of MetaCartel Grants DAO and carry it forward. The seeds of MetaCartel Grants DAO are its values. They are community first, building in the open, playing long-term games with long-term people, and slaying Moloch. Moloch is the god of coordination failure. We could talk about that another time. So with that, I want to invite the pallbearers up onto the stage. The MetaCartel Grants DAO is dead. Long live the MetaCartel! The MetaCartel Grants DAO is dead. Long live the MetaCartel! The MetaCartel Grants DAO is dead. Long live the MetaCartel!
Where are the feet? Okay, where are the feet?
If you feel, do not refrain from laying hands upon the fallen Chili Man. Pay your last respects. Give him a big up. The Chili Man leaves us today with a legacy worth celebrating. Feel his presence. Feel the Scoville rating. His heat does not diminish, though his body no longer functions.
Show your mistakes, Kevin. There's a dead man in front of you.
If you want to go far, go together.
The music just pauses. Yeah, yes. Right? I thought it was a different one. There you go. Now it's about
All right. Looks great, guys. Thank you.
popped up on the wall, yeah?
Yeah, there we go.
Nice job. That was great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Beautiful.
It was fun.
Alright, I gotta go take the other.
See a picture of that. You guys all line up?
Yeah.
Go do it. Yeah, go do it.
Alright, go ahead.
Sorry, one sec. I have to find the film.
It's alright. Oh yeah, is this it?
Nice.
Nice.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's good to do these things. You catch the, you know, I didn't get deep into the fungi side, but, you know, it was definitely thinking about that.
We pull beard.
Yeah, we popped it.
Wait, that song seems funny.
Yeah, I don't remember. Was that the right song?
It is, yeah, that's the song. Yeah, it just has this, like, a lull. This one part, it gets really quiet, you know.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's good, man. I mean, people got the reference. Yeah, that's really all that matters.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, let's put that maybe next to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, wherever you want it.
How heavy was that thing? Was it about?
Not heavy at all.
Kind of like,
Yep.
It almost like
Maybe, yeah.
move this to the side slightly. Something like that.
Yeah. It's not gonna tilt or anything. All right.